G'day guys, E53 here, and I'm back with a video. Just one of the questions that that a lot of people ask when they first start to get into sim racing, or they start to do it for a little while, as they start to realise that perhaps a lot of the people that they're racing against, or on videos that they watch online, a lot of people are running custom paint schemes. And that's something that I wanted to cover off today, because a lot of people don't actually know how to make them. So I thought I'd put together a really simple, super simple guide on how to do a very basic paint scheme. I mean, my paints aren't advanced by any means. There are a lot of people out there that can do these really very professional looking, intricate paint schemes, but what I'm really looking at doing today is just running you over the basics more than anything else, and just getting you to understand a little bit about the software that you need to use, and just really a really bare bones guide on how to use it. And then from there you can either take it to watch some other videos from some other guys who've got a fair amount more skill than me on how to do the more advanced stuff, or you can just learn really as I did by doing it. So now, it's pretty much the same for every sim. We're going to be looking at specifically iRacing, because that's the one that I spend the most time on. But the stuff that I'm going to show you today is pretty much applicable to any sim. The only difference is really how you get the car to show up in the game. So in terms of what you need to get to start, you need a good graphics editing program. Now, if you've got Photoshop or something like that, great, use that. I don't, but I do use a free piece of software called GIMP. So I've got this here. I'll just open this up, and it's GIMP 2.6. It's important that if you do go to get this, it is free. But if you do go to download this, make sure you get version 2.6. There is a later version, but it doesn't actually allow you to save it in the file formats that you actually need. GIMP 2.6 allows you to save the files in any format really that you want. There's a lot of different formats you can use, whereas the newer one just lets you save it in one that only GIMP can read. So it's not as useful. So alright, so that's basically the program there. Now, the other thing that you're going to need to paint up a car is what they call a template for that car. Now, for iRacing, and I'll just open iRacing up here, you get the templates from, if you go to the car that you've got and you go to paint. In this case, we're going to use the Holden V8 supercar, simply because it's just a really easy, straightforward body shape. A lot of the formula cars with the wings and everything like that have really more complicated body shapes, but this is just I guess an intro sort of thing. So what we want is to go into the car here and select download car template there. Alright, and that'll save it. Now, if you're using rFactor or something like that and using a modded car, quite often you'll find that the developers, the people who've actually made the mod, will make the templates available on the download page or wherever. But either way, you need a template. So, just to give you an idea on what that looks like, I've actually already downloaded the one here for the Holden. So I'm just going to go into here, open up, and those are a couple that I painted up earlier on. I'll explain to you later why there's actually two of those, but that's you basically just want the base one. That's this one here, Holden Commodore VF V8, which has come in the original. So it's already set to open with GIMP. It's a PSD file, so it's a Photoshop file. So it'll open automatically with Photoshop. Clear all this nonsense out of the way. Okay, so here it is. Now I'll just make that a little bit bigger. So everything that you can see here on the screen is basically the skin of the car, how it will look. Just blow it up, make it a little bit bigger. So if you take a look at it, you can generally see what's what. You know, you've got bonnet, windscreen, roof, over the boot lid, left side, right side. I believe that's the rear wing there. That's a bit about the front bumper and the headlights, and also you've got the rear bumper up here. So it's fairly basic anyway. So, and what you can actually see here is the iRacing templates have got these custom, oh, not custom, but the default patterns that come with them. So if you're just starting out, these can actually be quite useful, because you can just get one of these patterns and say, for example, you want to just color the car the way that you want. You can just select the layer that it's on. I'll explain a bit more about layers in a minute, and just color fill it to the way that you want it, and use whatever color scheme you want on their patterns. And that's an easy way to get a custom scheme, I suppose, is just to do your own colors and throw your own sponsors on there, which I'll show you how to do in a sec. So that's one way to do it, but you'll tend to find that most of the people who do their own custom designs actually start from a clean slate. So what they actually need to do is to turn off or disable all the layers on above it. So over here, every graphics program works with layers, and as you can see here, these are your layers basically. And any layer that you see that is above another layer is going to show up when you click visible. I'm not sure if you can see over there, it's a little eye symbol for GIMP. Maybe something else on Photoshop or the other programs that you might care to use, but that is these are the layers. So if you want, for example, a layer to show up on top of another layer, so say for example this is the one that we just added the black to, this one down here, which I've got selected but you can't see yet because the other layer is enabled on top of it, but if you click and drag it and put it up above, that's the one you see. And of course if you make it invisible, you see that one again. Alright, so it's really important to have a decent understanding of how layers work before you actually get into anything, because it can be massively frustrating when you think you're working away on one layer, you're working on something else, and it's just... So any layer that you want to be working on, you want to have actually selected, and you want to have it visible. So what we want to do is we want to actually get rid of all of these layers here, because these are all the iRacing default paint schemes, and we want to start from a clean slate. So easiest way to do it is to just go down there and click the little eye, which means that they're all going invisible, which means they're all going away. The other way is to just go down to the bottom, drag the base paint scheme up to the top, but this is the way I normally do it, so just get rid of all of those. Not every paint scheme, I'm pretty sure if you download a template from for like RFactor or something like that, it's not going to have all those default paint schemes, so that probably won't be an issue for you. You probably wind up with something very much like this, which is the base. But the iRacing ones are fairly well advanced because they come straight from the game developers, obviously. And there are a number of other layers that you can turn on and off. So you've got decals. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's just your little emergency decals and the V8 Supercars logo there. What else have we got here? Just what they call parts, so your fuel filler, things like that, so you can turn that layer off or on. iRacing will actually put those, in terms of parts and other little bits and pieces like that, badges, fuel filler caps, lights, stuff like that, even if you don't enable them on your template, the game will still generate them on the car once they're in the game. That's not the case with all sims. So, but you can turn those on and off. Decals, yeah, we went over before. Now, this is actually an interesting layer here, the sponsor layers. It's not visible by default, but if you turn it on, it just gives you a bit of an idea where the sponsors usually sit on the car. So you can actually, it just helps you centralize them and just understand where sponsors can go and where they're going to be visible if you're a little bit confused about what goes where on the template, because sometimes, like I say, with the open wheeler shapes and everything like that, they can be a little bit more complicated to sort of figure out what's what and what corresponds to what. Okay, so we're working on this base layer here, so the first thing to do is actually select the layer that we want to be working with, which is this one. And like I say, it's going to be a very, very basic paint scheme because I don't want to confuse everyone with, if you're a beginner and this is a beginner's guide. So let's say that we want to just choose another base color for the car. So we can just go to the colors here, we'll choose yellow. Now there are a number of different ways that you can actually paint with. So you've got your paintbrush here, and that's no different to the Microsoft paintbrush program you probably used at school. There's a pencil there, and for each of those you can sort of select how big you want the brush to be, and you can draw away on there to your heart's content if you want. I'll just undo that. But if you want to fill the entire area, use this bucket fill tool over here. And you'd basically just click and fill it. And so that's basically all there is to it, really. You've got the you've just painted the entire car yellow. So when you import this this paint scheme into the game, the car will show up looking like that. So now to get some logos on there. So you can basically choose any logo that you want from around the internet. I get most of mine from Google. You can get patterns as well from Google, being any search engine that you want to use. And generally, if you've got the option, if you want to go on there and search for something, say for example it's a Shell logo or a Momo logo or Holden logo or anything like that, try and get a PNG file if you can. The reason for that is that most of the time they have transparent backgrounds. Whereas a normal JPEG always has a rectangular background. I'll show you why that's important. So say for example here we've got the E53 logos that I use for the videos, and this one here is a PNG file, and this one here is a JPEG. So we'll start off by opening the JPEG, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I actually want to open it with GIMP, so it's early morning. So go open. Okay, so we want to find, we'll just open the JPEG to start with. So here it is. Now, if we want to import a JPEG, and this is exactly the same progress no matter what type of file that it is, you can go to Edit, Copy, and then over onto your car template, Edit, Paste. And it's got all these options for pasting. I normally use Paste As and New Layer, because what that'll actually do is pop the logo in there. As you can see there, it's just appeared as a new layer. So you've got it selected here and you can actually work with it. Now you'll notice here that it's showing up, you're only seeing part of it. Now the reason for that is there's a mask layer over what you can see here. And if you turn that off, that's what you get. Now the game can work completely well with that, but the mask layer actually helps you identify what's actually going to be displayed. So I normally work with that on. So anyway, we've got the E53 logo here, and in order to work with it, you've got to make sure it is selected. So it's still selected. It's there as clipboard at the moment, but you can rename that to whatever you like. And then it's just a case of moving it around and having it where you want to sit on the car. So I want it to sit on the door. And then of course it's a very simple matter of just selecting the bucket tool again, and you can colour in all the white to match the colour of the car. So there you go. Alright, so now what you want to do obviously is if you want the same logo on the other side of the car, very easy way you can actually do that, and just go over here to your layer that you're actually working with at the moment, still called clipboard for us. You can actually right click on that and go to duplicate layer. So now you've actually got two there, one on top of the other. So you can get your move tool, grab one and move it. And now you've got two. So now of course what you want to do is rotate that, because this layer, as you can see, is upside down to us, because it's almost as if the car's sort of been peeled open. So you've got it laying there flat in front of you. So you want to rotate this, and to make sure that we get it right, so you just got a rotate tool here. You can just click that, and you can either do it via the slider, you can click and drag it around if you want, but just to be precise, I normally use this slider or type numbers into this, and of course you want to rotate it 180 degrees. And there we are. Alright, so that's all done. And now we just probably want to just try and move it so it's roughly in the same spot as the other one. If you want to be a little bit more precise, you've got this layer here which is quite useful, and this wouldn't be on all your R-Factor templates or so on necessarily, but it's on the iRacing ones. It's called wire. Now if you turn that on, it lets you know basically where all the contours of the car are. So, you know, you can see here is where the fuel filler cap's going to go. Here's where the back door is. Here's the door handles. Here's the air vent, and so on like this. So you're not necessarily putting logos over areas that are going to be covered with fuel fillers and stuff like that. So you can actually use that as a really good way to just sort of line up as well where exactly your logo is sitting relative to, you know, you can use little markers like door handles and things like that to just make sure that you've got it fairly well lined up. Okay, so now if we wanted to put a logo onto the bonnet, we can turn that wire layer off or leave it on. Really doesn't matter. Some people prefer to work with it on. We might leave it on for this one just to help us center the logo. So we will go, we've got open so far, we'll get our Performance E-Streaming logo here. I didn't need to open. There we go. We need to edit and copy. Edit and paste as, new layer, and there it is. Our Performance E-Streaming logo has shown up. It's a PNG, so of course it hasn't got that big white background that we were working with before. It's basically just the text and that logo, so that's all we need. So if we just get our move tool, we've just got to make sure that we actually click on a part that's actually the layer, because if you miss it, click somewhere else, you can drag the wire all over the place and everything, and it's all goes horribly wrong. So just move that roughly into position, get the rotate tool, click on that, and this time we want to make it rotate 90 degrees. And just to be absolutely precise, I'm going to type it in there. Okay, so now that's exactly 90 degrees, which is where we want it. And now we can just resize it a little bit. Move it into the center of the bonnet. And there we go. So as you can see, really, really basic paint scheme. So I'm not going to do much more than that. I'm not going to mess around with any patterns or anything like that, but I'm just going to now import this into the game so you get a bit of an idea on how it looks. Now, one of the things that you want to do is to make sure that before you finish working with these, you actually switch off the wire layer, because anything that you have on now is going to show up on the car. You don't want the wire to show up, or maybe you do, and if you do, leave it on, but normally you turn it off, so you haven't got all that showing up on the car. Same with the sponsor layer. You probably don't want that on. That's just generally designed to be used as a guide. You can turn the mask and the decals and everything off with iRacing ones if you want to, because like I say, iRacing is going to generate all that anyway, but for R factor and so on, it might be slightly different. Right, so now that you've got the car designed the way you want it, you're going to want to save it, and I normally, and this is just a general rule of thumb for me, is I generally save it twice, and I'll show you why I do that. So I'll go to Save As, and okay, so it's called Hot and Cold or VF-V8, so we might just rename this to E53 VF-V8, and you can see it's still a PSD file. Alright, now the PSD file, I always save one version as a PSD file, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The reason for that is that if something's wrong in the game, once the car goes into the game and it doesn't look right, you can come back and you can still play with the layers and edit it and get it right and get it exactly the way you want it. Whereas if you save it as another file type, which you need to get it in the game, you can no longer work with that file, really. It gets rid of all your layers and you've just got a single layer, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is why you want GIMP 2.6 and nothing later, because in GIMP 2.6 you get all these different options about what type of file you want to save it as. Now each sim that you might be using may use a different file type, alright, but the one that you want for iRacing is a TGA, Target image. So save it as that, and the first thing that's going to say is the image should be exported before it can be saved as TGA for the following reasons, and that is that a TGA can't handle layers. a TGA file will only work with one single layer like a picture. So what it's actually going to do is it's going to merge the visible layers. So everything that you've got visible, it's going to merge down into one layer, so it's just a flat picture with no layers at all. Just click that, and that's what it's actually done. So with the TGA file, if you go to open that back up now in GIMP, you're only going to have the one layer there, and you can't really work with it. So I always save a PSD, so you can make any changes if you want, and the TGA, which is to be imported into the game. Alright, so now that you've actually got your file, you've got your template, you've done your painting, you have got it saved in the correct format for the game that you want it to use. How you get it into the game is slightly different. So in terms of R factor and stuff like that, and Automobilist is the same, you'll actually need to find the folder in the game where all the paint schemes are kept, and you're only really going to do that by looking around. And then you've got to copy the paint scheme in, and you will need to get your player file, which is normally like a text file or something like that, to recognize that that is the paint scheme that it has to use from the car. I'm not going to delve into how that all works for every sim. You can generally find guides on how to do that. Generally, if you're on one of the specialist sites that does the mods for those games, like R Factor Central or whatever, they'll have guides on there on how to do it for each individual sim. Seeing as we're working with iRacing, I'll show you how to get it into iRacing because it is a little bit different. The reason that it's a little bit different is you've actually got a really handy third-party program that will automatically grab your paint scheme and put it onto the car that you're racing, and also make it so everybody else that's using this little app can see it as well, which is really cool, because normally what you need to do is for anybody else to see your custom paint scheme, they have to have it downloaded to their computer. So what you want is to go to this. This is called Trading Paints. And this is the little third-party app for iRacing, and it just allows you to upload all your custom paint schemes, and then it will automatically download those, and anybody who's racing against you who's running Trading Paints as well will be able to, it will automatically download your paint scheme to their computer as well, so they can see it on your car. So how we get it into the game is we just scroll down and find the car that we're using, which is the Holden Commodore VF V8. Now the paint scheme that you're going to see pop up is a paint scheme that I used for a different series, a league series that was running a little while ago. And we can just go to choose new paint here. You've got to sign up for this. There is a paid version that allows you to do your pit crews and everything like that as well. But if you have the free version, you can still do basic paints like this and just have the car done. So go to select a file, and now it just wants us to find the file which we saved. And here it is. So we want the E53 VF V8 TGA file. Open that. Success. And there it is. So it's there now, and what will happen is when we go into the game next time, it will show that. So what I'll do is I'll just do that right now. Now what you need to do when you sign up to Trading Paints, there's a little, you actually download a little Trading Paints as well, and I'll show you where that is. It just basically saves to your desktop like that, and it's just this little utility here that just sits there and runs in the background. You have to have it open, but you don't have to have it up and displayed or anything like that. It'll just run there in the background for you and download anything as you run iRacing. So we'll go back into iRacing, and we'll just go to a test car on track session. Okay, so here we are in the sim. So we will just jump into the, and it's probably just worth mentioning here that the little preview car that you get up here in the session and also in your results will still reflect whatever little paint scheme that you've done in the paint car section of iRacing. So that won't change depending on what you've got in Trading Paints. A lot of people sort of do them up to look similar to what their paint schemes are, but at the moment it's still the black one, and that won't change. So I'll just go in here to test, and it's just going to take a second to load that paint scheme. So we'll just pull out of the pit lane, so we've got a bit of replay to look at. Should be enough. Okay, and as you can see here, our paint scheme has shown up on the car. Very, very basic, like I said. So performance E-string across the bonnet, everything else. So as you can see, the E53 logos have come up on the side. And that's really all there is to it. So in terms of how to actually do these schemes, as you see, it's really mastering the use of those graphics programs, Photoshop, GIMP. There are a few others out there. Anything that you really care to use. And understanding the way that layers work. So in terms of making these files, it's all about really getting the template, getting the layers in there to actually make the car look the way you want, whether you're putting sponsors on there or patterns on there or anything else. And then saving the file in the correct format and putting it in the correct place. Of course, iRacing with trading paints makes it really, really easy. For R-Factor or Automobilista, I think you can do the same thing for the Seto Corsa maybe as well. It's all really about making sure that you put the file in the correct place so the game knows where to look for it. But that is specific to each game and certainly not the scope of this video to actually run through here. So that's really all there is to it. So if you do have any further questions about it or anything's not clear, please leave a comment below. Leave a like there if you want to. If you want to keep this video aside to refer back to later on, that's an easy way to do it. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more content. So until next time, thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.